Okay, so now we go to number 8. And for number 8, it asks you in Act 1, how does Reverend Paris's belief in the supernatural affect his response to his daughter's illness? Okay, A, he refuses to send for a doctor. We don't have any evidence of that. B, he professes his faith that God will heal her. C, he seeks help from Reverend Hale. Or D, he believes Abigail's assertion that Betty was not bewitched. Okay, no one seems to really be believing Abigail's story at the beginning. So D isn't very reliable. B, he professes his faith that God will heal her. That never happens, okay? And then he's not refusing to send for the doctor. Instead, he sends for who? He seeks help from Reverend Hale, okay? And that was the most obvious answer because that's something we really talked about in Act 1 about with Reverend Hale coming from Beverly, right? He's supposed to be the expert on witchcraft. And that's what he believes is wrong with her, not a physical illness, right? Not something that God can heal right away, right? He needs Reverend Hale to diagnose her. And that was the correct answer, okay? So for number 9, it asks you, in Act 1, Thomas Putnam's attitude towards Reverend Paris is one of A, mistrust, B, respect, C, pity, or D, contempt. Okay, so we know that Putnam doesn't like Reverend Paris. Why? Putnam's brother-in-law was supposed to be the next Reverend of Salem, right? And then he didn't win the election. He lost to Reverend Paris. Okay, so he's bitter about that. He's also bitter because even though he has a lot of money, he doesn't have as much power as he would like, right? He would like to have a ton more power, and that comes through more land. Okay, so that's his prerogative. Okay. So, yeah, he does mistrust Paris. No one really trusts him, right? He definitely doesn't respect Paris. He doesn't pity Paris, right? He doesn't really feel sorry for him in any way. And contempt, okay? So you're probably thinking, okay, A, yeah, he really does mistrust him. But what about this word contempt? So if you didn't know this word, this would have been something you could have asked me, okay? If you look up the definition of the word contempt, I have it right here. Contempt means the feeling that a person or thing is beneath consideration, worthless, or deserving scorn. Disregard for something that should be taken into account. Okay? The offense of being disobedient or disrespectful of a court of law and its officers. Okay? So we have that. Contempt would be the best answer. All right. So even though mistrust is a good choice, contempt is a better one. All right. He just disregards anything Paris says. He doesn't take him seriously. He doesn't think that he should be reverend. Right. It's not really a mistrusting thing as much as it is a feeling of contempt. All right. And that was just knowing that word. And again, if there's ever a word that you don't know, feel free to ask me. Okay. So the best answer for number 9 was D. All right, so if we go on to number 10 here. So I'm going to scroll down. How does Putnam justify sending Ruth to Tituba in the first act? How does Mrs. Putnam justify this? Okay, so this kind of goes back to why she has Ruth in the woods with the girls to begin with, or getting Tituba's help, okay? Tituba promised to revive Mrs. Putnam's dead children. We don't have any evidence of that, okay? So for A, we never really heard about that. Mrs. Putnam didn't think little foolish conjuring would do any charm. Okay, we don't have any evidence of that either. Okay, C, Mrs. Putnam thought it might help Ruth, who seems to be ailing. Or D, Mrs. Putnam feels she deserves to know why she had to endure the deaths of 7 children, excuse me. D is your best answer, okay? She keeps saying, why did this happen to me? Why did I deserve this, right? She wanted to get some answers of why this has happened to her, all right? Number 11, which phrase in Act 1 best describes Abigail Williams' character? Again, some of these options were okay, right? But your job was to figure out the best one, all right? A, impulsive and thoughtless, okay? Is Abigail impulsive and thoughtless? Yeah, we could consider her that. Is she naive and timid? Definitely not. Is she proud and manipulative? Okay, this is why this is the best choice. C is the answer here. Because, y'all, I use the word manipulative so many times in class to describe Abigail. We describe that in our notes, right? We we described her as manipulative. So that should have been a key word here for you to pick proud and manipulative. And we know for a fact that she's not affectionate or vulnerable. She is to Proctor, but not overall, right? This isn't the best way to describe Abigail. So manipulative was the key word for number 11, and that answer was C. Okay? Number 12, consider Tituba's state of mind when she began naming names in the first act. What can you infer about her motivation? All right. A, she was afraid of Reverend Hale and thought naming names would save her from punishment. B, she actually saw Goody Good and Goody Osborne in the forest and wanted to tell the truth. C, she was confused and talking about a dream she once had. Or D, she didn't like the women she named and she hoped they would be punished. Okay. This is something we talked about in detail, right? She is afraid of these people. She is a slave. She's not in the best position to argue with them. Okay. And she thought that naming names would save her from punishment. All right. So that was the best answer. Okay. We're almost done with these multiple choice. Number 13. What does the dramatic exposition that describes arguments about deeds and boundaries in Act 1 prepare you for? All right, we talked about this in detail. The exposition are those long paragraphs where Arthur Miller, the playwright, is giving us background on the characters he's created, right? The narrator is tuning us into what's happened so far in Salem, okay? So for 13, you had A, Reverend Parris's anger over not being given firewood. B, the real story about what went on with the girls in the woods. C, John Proctor's attempt to deny his lust for Abigail. Or D, Putnam and Proctor's disagreement over a piece of land. Okay, the correct answer for number 13 was D. All right, this is what is spoken about in detail in the exposition. Okay, this is something that we talked about afterwards, right? If you go back to the exposition, there is evidence of this. And remember, when studying, you could have easily gone through the PDF of Act 1 to scroll back through it. And also, we discussed this in class, okay? Most of you got it's not last one, number 14. Most of y'all got this right. Based on the background knowledge exposition from Act 1 that describes the children who had to walk straight, eyes slightly lowered, mouths shut until bidden to speak. What kind of life did the children in Salem have? It definitely wasn't joyful. It wasn't really wild. Joyless is the best. Educated, maybe, but we don't really have that much evidence of them going to school or anything to support that answer. Okay? Number 15, in Act 1, what can the reader infer about Salem based on the fact that Reverend Hale asks Giles why his wife is hiding books and reading them? A, Salem residents were well educated. B, reading books was a suspicious activity. C, more women read books than men. Or D, women and men read books together. Okay, well, clearly if reading is a suspicious act, then it's something that not a lot of people are doing, okay? So they're probably not that well educated if not that many people are reading. More women definitely didn't read books than men because this is a woman, Giles' wife, that is being accused of reading, okay? D, men and women read books together. There's no evidence of that. So the best answer for here would be B. Reading books was a suspicious activity. All right, and number 16. From the comments of Parris in Act 1, his concern for his daughter seems primarily based on his anxiety about his reputation, fear for the fate of her soul, great love for his only child, or terror of the devil, okay? We know that his concern for Betty isn't that great, right? His concern has to do with his reputation. Again, reputation is a buzzword with Parris, all right? Anytime you see Parris, anything with the word reputation, anything about power, that is his main concern. It's not his love for Betty, unfortunately, as much as we would hope that would be the case. Okay, so that's it for the multiple choice. For the short answer, number 17, in Act 1 of the Crucible, numerous accusations of witchcraft are made by various characters. What do you learn in Act 1 that helps account for such an outbreak of hysterical accusations? Write a brief explanation detailing the characters' need to accuse each other. So a lot of y'all only talked about the girls and the ending when they're accusing people, okay? Before that happened, there were other accusations made by other people in that room, made by Goody Putnam, by Mr. Putnam, right? There were other people in the room, Giles with the reading of books, all of these things. These were all accusations, okay? And you need to be sure that you had put that in there, all right? So I'm running out of time, so I'm going to